What if Hitler had done the unthinkable, invaded and conquered Britain? In a world without D-Day, would London have fallen under the swastika? What would have happened to the British Empire, and would you be speaking German? Strap in, because this alternate history changes everything about our world. Chapter 1, Operation Sea Lion, the invasion that never was, until now. In our reality, Nazi Germany's planned invasion of Britain, Operation Sea Lion, never took place. The Luftwaffe failed to win air superiority during the Battle of Britain in 1940. The Royal Navy remained dominant. Hitler turned eastward instead, toward the Soviet Union. But what if the tides had turned? In this new timeline, Germany doesn't hesitate. The Luftwaffe dominates the RAF after a brutal bombing campaign in mid-1940. Britain's radar towers are destroyed early. Fighter command is crippled. Aircraft production is bombed relentlessly. Cities like London and Manchester fall into chaos, and, with British air defences gutted, Hitler gives the green light. Operation Sea Lion is launched in September 1940. Thousands of German troops land on the southern coast, Kent, Sussex and Dorset. British home defences are hastily organised but poorly coordinated. The Royal Navy fights valiantly but suffers massive losses from U-boats and Luftwaffe attacks. The Germans push inland. Portsmouth, Southampton, Brighton, London. Within 3 weeks, British forces are retreating north. Parliament evacuates. Churchill orders a national resistance, but the cracks begin to show. Ireland declares neutrality. Scotland threatens independence. Canada and Australia brace for the worst. On October 17th, German tanks roll into London itself. Churchill is captured or killed. Buckingham Palace is bombed. The Union Jack is lowered, and the swastika raised over Westminster. Britain is no longer free. Chapter 2, Life Under the Swastika, Britain's new Nazi regime. The conquest is swift, but the occupation is brutal. Hitler installs a puppet government, headed by Oswald Mosley, leader of the British Union of Fascists. Parliament is dissolved. Dissent is outlawed. Political opponents are arrested or executed. The Gestapo opens headquarters in London. Concentration camps are built in the countryside. Jews, communists, union leaders, and resistance members are rounded up. The British resistance, made up of former soldiers, farmers, and factory workers, begins underground operations, but with limited support from abroad, their impact is marginal. German is taught as the primary language in schools. Nazi ideology becomes part of the curriculum. Shakespeare is censored. The BBC is renamed and repurposed as a propaganda machine. Portraits of King George V, who is either executed or exiled in this timeline, are replaced with posters of the Führer. The Church of England is forced to pledge allegiance to the Nazi regime. Dissenting priests are silenced or replaced. Traditional British holidays, such as Pancake Day and St. George's Day, are replaced with Nazi celebrations. The people live in fear, and curfews are quickly enforced by the SS. Economically, Germany strips Britain of its resources. Steel and coal are diverted to the Reich. British factories are repurposed for German arms production. Food rationing becomes extreme. Londoners are starving while Berlin feasts. The British Empire begins to collapse. India erupts into rebellion, now cut off from its colonial masters. South Africa teeters towards fascism. Canada and Australia try to preserve their independence, but their days feel numbered. The United States, watching from across the Atlantic, is paralyzed. Roosevelt, without British support, struggles to justify intervention. Isolationism reigns supreme. The course of World War II is fundamentally changed. Chapter 3, A Nazi-Controlled Europe, the End of the Allied Powers. By 1942, Nazi Germany controls all of mainland Europe and the British Isles. The Axis is untouchable. Germany, Italy, and Japan coordinate more effectively than ever before. With Britain subdued, Hitler no longer needs to divide his forces. He focuses everything eastward. Operation Barbarossa, his invasion of the Soviet Union, is much more powerful in this timeline. No British bombing of German supply lines. No second front from the west. Just overwhelming Nazi force pouring into Russian territory. Moscow falls in 1942. Stalin is executed, exiled, or replaced by a Nazi collaborator. The Soviet resistance continues in the east, but the Red Army is shattered. Europe is unified under the Nazi flag. The Greater German Reich stretches from the Atlantic to the Urals. Its borders include France, Poland, Scandinavia, Britain, the Balkans, and most of the Soviet Union. Berlin becomes the new imperial capital of the world. But the Nazis aren't finished yet. Japan, emboldened by the collapse of British colonial control in Asia, moves quickly. India becomes a Japanese satellite. Southeast Asia falls under the co-prosperity sphere. Australia faces invasion. The United States is surrounded, but still not involved. Pearl Harbor may or may not happen in this timeline. Either way, public appetite for war is gone. FDR is weakened politically. Without Britain as a launching point, the US has no viable way to land troops in Europe. Nazi Germany begins to fund fascist movements inside Latin America. Argentina, Brazil, and even Mexico flirt with authoritarianism. The world tips further toward complete totalitarian rule. Democracy is in retreat, permanently. Chapter 4: The Nazi Future, a World Rewritten. It's the 1950s. Hitler is still alive, aging but in power. His empire is technologically advanced, culturally sterilized, and ruthlessly efficient. Massive highways crisscross Europe. Giant stadiums hold Nazi rallies. The Nazi moon program is under development. But underneath it all, resistance simmers. Pockets of rebels operate from Scotland, Wales, and Ireland. Underground radio stations broadcast forbidden music and Churchill speeches. Smugglers sneak in literature and food from Canada, but the Gestapo's crackdowns are merciless. The British identity is being erased. Children now pledge allegiance to the Führer. English history is rewritten to frame Nazi ideology as Britain's destiny. Figures like Nelson, Churchill, and Darwin are either vilified or erased from textbooks. Cities are renamed. Stonehenge is used for occult Nazi rituals. The monarchy is a relic, mocked in Nazi satire. Yet cracks are forming. The Nazi economy begins to stagnate. Its empire is too large, too complex. Youths begin rebelling. Black market cultures thrive. Former colonies, like Nigeria, Kenya, and Jamaica, form their own revolutionary governments, promising to one day restore democracy. In the United States, President Truman is elected based on a hardline anti-Nazi platform. America begins developing nuclear weapons at breakneck speed, not to end a war, but to prevent one. A new arms race begins. Not a Cold War, but a cold resistance. Europe under Nazism becomes a surveillance state. Citizens are monitored by drones and informants. A single word against the regime could cost you your life. Art is censored. Creativity dies. Languages are unified into a fascist dialect. Eugenics programs continue. Sterilization, genetic manipulation, even Nazi cloning programs. By the 1960s, the question isn't when the Reich will fall, but how much damage it will do before it does. Some historians say that the British conquest was the point of no return, because once democracy fell in London, the rest of the world never stood a chance. If Nazi Germany had conquered Britain, the world as we know it would be unrecognizable. No D-Day, no Allied victory, no free Europe. Democracy would be a memory, extinguished beneath jackboots and red banners. The greatest danger in history wasn't just the Nazis themselves, but the terrifying possibility that a small change in battlefield tactics could have won them the war. And if they had, freedom might have died forever. Preserve it by exercising your right to voice your thoughts in the comments below. Like this video and subscribe to Alt History Zone to see where the exploration of truth takes us. Stay tuned.